Today we're going to be talking about love and marriage. We have Christiane and Andrew Rutledge joining us here today, and we are so happy to have you guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for joining us to talk about marriages. We know that you do a lot of work in there as a pastor. You're a teacher, Christiane,
Yes.
but what are sort of your roles at the church when it comes to relationships and marriage?
Well, as you said, mine is a formal role. I'm one of the pastors at Central. I oversee kids, youth, young adults, and our young families ministries there, with a focus, of course, of making the home the spiritual center of a kid's life. And so we're very much invested in how do we pour into couples and families and make sure marriages are strong, because everything about a family will stem from a great marriage. And then Christiane and I together teach our marriage prep course. We do that 3 times a year. We do a 5-week program with couples, and then we do one-on-ones with them where we kind of dig deep into the nuts and bolts of their relationship and try to make sure they have that healthy foundation that the rest of their lives will be founded on.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. Yeah, the foundation is essential, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I love how
Yeah.
you're looking at it from a holistic thing. It's the whole family,
Yeah,
right? How the marriage
absolutely.
impacts the family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So in your experience working with families, what are the most common challenges that couples face today, and how can they overcome it with the help of God?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to take this question because we get that often asked to us.
Yep.
And we typically say to couples when they first start out, 2 key things. One of them, unfortunately, is sex and money. And it's typically because there's never enough of either of those. And so you
That's
have to
true.
kind of navigate
Right.
that because
Yes.
those are the things at the forefront. And if they don't communicate well about either of those things, that kind of can bubble up and become a really source of contention. And so
Yeah.
it's really, really important that these couples take the time to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Communication is key.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
most-
even those unrealistic expectations we place on others without communicating them. I
Yeah.
think those are big.
Yeah.
I was going to say
absolutely.
most of the divorces or separations that we deal with at the church are related to that very thing. They're not communicating. They have unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you'd do this and you didn't do this, and then it leads to people looking for it in somebody else because they're
Right.
not getting it at home. And so, obviously, in today's hyper individualized world, you can very secretly build relationships with other people. You can delve into pornography. You can find access to everything at home in privacy. And nobody even needs, your spouse doesn't even need to know about it. And
Right.
of course, then that just erodes the relationship. And that's usually the most common reason we see people separate.
Wow.
So you told us about some of the challenges.
Yeah.
So as you're counseling or working with couples, what are some of the key essentials that you help them to or stand for or build in their marriage to create a Christ-centered marriage?
Yeah. That's a fantastic question. We do obviously meet with a lot of couples, both before marriage, but for us, the pre-marriage course is just the beginning of the relationship. We want to walk with couples through the rest of their marriages. And so when things do happen and they do fall apart and drift apart, they do come to us. And the first thing we do is, well, we start by saying, okay, what's your ideal vision? What do you want to be happening in your marriage? And then what we do is we say, okay, where are you at now? When I was in school, we were taught this scale, 1 to 10. Where would you place your relationship? It's kind of arbitrary.
Yeah.
But the point is, pick where you are now, and then you'll never jump from there to your ideal. We always say to them, okay, what's one thing that you could do between now and the next time we meet that would move you one step closer to your ideal relationship? So it's not only about envisioning the future, where do you want to be, but it's also about the more practical steps of how do you actually start to move there, knowing that you can't jump all the way back to where you want to be. But it's something about just talking about it, where the other person goes, I didn't know that. I remember a while ago, we were meeting with a couple and she was like, I'd love it if he just started, hanging his towels up and doing the dishes.
So simple.
Yeah.
So
And-
simple.
Yeah.
It really is. Sometimes the other person's like, really, that's all you want me to do this week? Yeah, this week, if you would just help me with the dishes, I'd be less angry at you.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
sometimes just talking about it helps people get to the root of it, or it makes them go, actually, I've been really upset about some really ridiculous things. I'm really sorry.
Right.
Yes,
Sometimes we
that's
get hung
true.
up on stuff that has
Right.
no bearing on life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we hold on to it too, that's when the little petty things come out,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So we have to talk about it
Absolutely.
right away.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, why are we so afraid to talk about it?
Well, I think too, it's the busyness of life. Like, and if you have
Mhm.
children or
yeah.
at the different stages you are in life, sometimes when you're older, you're like, well, you should know this. We've been married for 20, 30 years.
Right.
This is like a given, or everybody knows that this is what it's supposed to
Yeah.
be like.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so we take that for granted. And I think
Mm.
that's where it's really key. At the end of the week, sometimes what we will do is like, so what was your highlight of the week? What were the
Mm.
things that you were struggling about? Or I will say, well, what's keeping you up at night? So we say that to couples as well, is to say, hey, have that conversation once a week to say,
I love
what
that.
is keeping you up? What is
Yeah.
making you stressed?
Yeah.
I like to say that to Andrew because in his job, there's so much going on all the time that life with kids kind of just goes away. And then you go,
Yeah.
wow, we haven't even connected all week. Yes, we live together. Yes, we, share a bed together, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you have any deep conversations. And so that's important, really, really important.
Yeah,
I also think a lot of couples never get to a point of really trusting each other. They never build a foundation where they can, this comes from the book Crucial Conversations, but this idea that can you talk to your spouse about anything? And the only way you can is if they feel safe. And in a
Right.
lot of our relationships, we never actually get to a place where we truly feel safe.
Right.
Christy and I were married 12 years before I had an actual honest conversation with her. Now,
Wow.
in that case, she was in Germany and I was at home. She's from Germany, so she was visiting
Okay.
home. And I guess over the safety of the telephone, because I knew if things get
Right.
ugly, I lost you. I don't know what happened.
Or the text.
But it took 12 years of our own marriage for us really to get to the point where I could tell her, hey, here's exactly what's going on in my head. And what we're trying to do now is just help couples get to there a lot sooner, to build that
Yes.
safety that's saying, hey, if I tell you what I'm actually thinking, it's not a criticism, it's not an attack, it's not that you're doing something wrong, that it's
Right.
more about I love you, and we just need to find a safe way to actually have those conversations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love this too because really this can go past just marriages, right? This
Absolutely.
is
Absolutely, yeah.
relationships. This is communication,
Yeah.
and they're valuable insights for us to learn across the board.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we
Absolutely.
do something with our couples, and it can be done with anybody. It's called the fear cycle. And we
Mm.
actually went to a conference for ourselves, and it wasn't what we made up. And they brought us through it going, what triggers you and what causes in turn for him to be triggered because you're triggered
Right.
in that whole cycle.
Right.
And I think for any relationship, whether it's mother-daughter, son, father, husband and wife, in any case, to be able to navigate that and go, this is what at my core
Yeah.
is what triggers me to be angry. And here's the reasons why.
Mhm.
And then when we speak, I'm inadvertently triggering you and I'm casting anxiety onto you. And now
Wow.
you're feeling this anxiety or stress,
Mm.
and we can trigger each other and we never get out of this cycle. And so it's
Mhm.
important being able to know what those are
Mhm.
in any relationship to be able to say, I'm not going anywhere. When you're having a difficult conversation, to
Right.
start off with, we need to talk about something. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not angry, but let's just chat.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so valuable.
So
Well,
good.
we'll be right back with more with Christiane and Andrew Rutledge.
So good. Well, welcome back to 700 Club Canada. We're here with Andrew and Christiane Rutledge, and we are talking love and marriage. Now, one question I have for you: do you have any wisdom for maybe a couple trying to navigate where they're unequally yoked? Maybe they don't share the same faith and values. How do you combat that?
I'll start by saying that is a very difficult place to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can even be different perspectives within Christianity. We even have friends who are attending different denominations and wrestle
Right.
with this. And so the first thing we would often tell people is even before you get into that, we really strongly caution people to be very careful about who you choose, because we don't realize just how deep these things go and how differences of religious opinion can really impact
Divide
the
and
relationship.
separate. Yeah. So when we first talk with couples, we say to them, this is going to be a source of contention. Whether you think so it is right now or not, it
Right.
will be, because faith is so deeply rooted within you
Mhm.
that it is going to cause tension. So to be really honest, when we navigate that with couples, we say to them, you need to really stop, pray about this, and really, really seek God on this, if this is what God wants for you. And then we meet with couples who are already in that situation and they're noticing that struggle. Like the couple that we were talking about, they were going to the Catholic Church and they were going to a non-denominational church, and it divided them because they would go to two different churches on a Sunday, and it became one's kids. It worked fine when they were dating and when they were first married on their own, and then they brought kids into it, and that caused struggles and contention because well, maybe we should baptize them in this way
Right.
or this one. And then as it continued, that became a challenge. So it is something that couples really need to talk about.
Yeah, and one of the things we do to approach it is we encourage the person who has faith. And I would say, if you think about the story of Ruth, where it's like you've been put into this situation, and in the first several years of her relationship with the king, all she did was she lived every day honoring him and honoring her faith in God. So you have to really know, what are your core convictions that you refuse to let go of?
Yeah.
And then what are the things where it's like, in this moment, I just need to love you. And I need to just continue to pray for you. And I believe the New Testament even says that you will be a testimony to that person.
Yeah.
And that just by loving them and being faithful to them and just honoring them every day of the year, you will one day come to a point where they will go, hey, I need what you have. And so it's about patience. It's about understanding that God put you there for a reason. And it's about understanding that one day God will say, okay, this is the moment that I put you in this relationship.
That's
and you will find that hope for each of you.
Yeah,
Amen.
I love that.
Amen.
Honor
So
and
good.
respect towards God and towards your spouse
Yeah.
is key, no matter where both of you are at.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
it's big about grace too,
Yeah.
right? I think
Yes.
sometimes we forget about that, and it's to be gracious, and how we live out our life is a testimony to your spouse as well, right?
Yeah.
Because they get to see who you are at your essence,
Right.
and I think how you conduct yourself will be a faith testament as well.
Absolutely.
And they see that. And we've had good conversations with couples where the husband will say, I watched her go to church for years and years and years. And then one day, God just really made it abundantly
I
clear
had to go with her.
I had to go with her. And then
Had
one
to
day I
figure out what
went,
was
and
going
then
on.
it changed
Wow.
Yep.
stuff.
Wow.
And so,
Yep.
because we've met with couples too, where neither of them have been in faith at all, and then one, God has tugged on their heart, and then all of a sudden there is that imbalance in their faith, and you kind of go, okay, God, what are you doing in our relationship? How are you going to use us or me to be able to navigate this new journey in our marriage with one of us having faith?
Yeah.
So,
So
in a
good.
similar sort of vein, what do you do with couples that maybe come to you and they're at a place where it's very close to separation or divorce? And how have you seen some marriages restored? And if so, how do you sort of walk couples through that season?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you have to do is just expose everything that's happening. You have to just sit down, okay, what happened? I just did this actually back in the fall with a young couple who had separated. And I met with the husband and I said, okay, I need you to talk to me and be honest about what has happened. And then you have to go back to your spouse and say, hey, here's what happened. And then we begin the work of, how do you then restore trust? Trust is the first thing that's broken, and it's quick to break and really, really impossible to restore. So I always warn couples, I said, one of you is going to have to be completely open book for the night, and you're going to think you're treating me like a child, but you need to take the passwords off your phones. You need to know, where are you all the time? We have our own personal rule of we're never going to be alone with a member of the opposite sex unless it's a child, one of our children, of course. Otherwise, so you're going to have to put some really strong boundaries in place where you can be willing to be held accountable, because that's the only way you can begin to restore that trust.
And it's simple
things.
things.
It is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's simple things that you can do, such as, like Andrew, you just said, your phone. It is open, and you have at any time, and we say this even with our own kids, is we have the right to look at that phone. And so Andrew and I even do that with our own stuff. Anytime you can pick up my phone and you can look at the text, you can see my history of what I'm searching up. It's that vulnerability again, because you have to build that trust back. And so even that the other spouse can say, I'm going to call you, and I'm actually going to put a location detector on your phone, so that any time of the day when I'm feeling anxious and I don't know, are you back into what you were into, that I can look and go, nope, he's at work like he said he was. Or I pick up the phone and I can say, hey, where are you at? How are things going? Those are things that will slowly build back the trust, so that you can say, okay, I'm an open book, I'm transparent. And even the conversations, we've had couples where we've had to say to them, be open and honest on what you're thinking and what you're feeling and what you're struggling. Because sometimes some things happen is because there's an unmet need and the other spouse didn't know that it was there. And couples, when we talk to them, are like, well, why wouldn't you say something? And they don't. And so this is where that open communication comes back in again, to have those conversations.
Yeah.
That's so good.
That is so key for even just, again, like all of this has to do so much with
Yep.
general relationships,
Right.
right? Trust
Yep.
is such a key
Absolutely.
in any relationship.
Yep.
Well, this has been an incredibly enriched conversation. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And thank
Oh,
you
our
for the
pleasure.
work that you do in family and marriages and couples. We
Mm.
so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you
you.
both.
Welcome.
Well, if you'd like any more information on Andrew and Christiane Rutledge, you can visit 700club.ca.